Okay. I'm just staring at the camera for fun. Hello, hello, hello. This is Warren Redlick. I'm here with Cormac McKay. Am I saying it right? Cormac
You
McKay?
are indeed, yeah.
Okay, so Cormac.
A good Irish name, Cormac McKay.
So Cormac is a politician, I'm going to call him, in Ireland. He's somebody who has run for office in Ireland. I don't think he's ever had the misfortune of being elected to an office, but he has a particular fascination with the Boring Company and believes that a Boring Company loop system in Dublin, Ireland would be great. Am I characterizing your views on that accurately?
You are indeed, yes. So we are planning a quite extensive investment, like in America, in public transport and public infrastructure. So Dublin's quite a small city of 1.5 million people, and we have one of the worst traffic problems in the world. So
I want to know who doesn't have a traffic problem. Everybody has traffic problems.
Yeah. So that was the one benefit that came out of the pandemic, was that we didn't have to deal with traffic for a while. But unfortunately, as we come out of the pandemic, we're going back into traffic. So we know the benefits of the loop system. So that is something I have proposed. I was planning on running for Dublin's first directly elected mayor. Unfortunately, that position is not going to happen. So I developed my transport policy on the understanding that I will be Dublin's first directly elected mayor. So that is not going to happen now. And I'm going to concentrate 100% on promoting the Dublin Loop.
Okay, so let's talk about Dublin Loop. So I don't know much about Dublin geography or Dublin traffic. I'm guessing it's a fairly big city. What's the population of Dublin?
1.5 million.
And are there suburbs outside the city that are not included in the 1.5 million?
Not too much, no. So a quarter of the population of Ireland lives within 25 kilometers of Dublin. So
Ireland. What's the population of Ireland?
We're up to about 5 million now, excluding Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland will be separate to that again. There's another 1.8 in Northern Ireland.
Okay, so just for those who are not familiar with Ireland, I believe the Republic of Ireland is its own country, and Northern Ireland is a part of the UK, the United Kingdom. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
You have that correct. Yeah.
And who has the more delightful accent, Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland, or is it about the same?
Well, we have so many different accents. In Dublin alone, we have 24 different accents. So
okay.
I've got quite a neutral accent for an Irish person.
Okay, and so Republic of Ireland, Dublin is the big city. Just for the sake of talking about Northern Ireland for a second, what's the biggest city in Northern Ireland?
Belfast would be the biggest city in Northern Ireland.
Okay, so let's focus on Dublin, though. So 1.5 million people does not sound like that big of a city to me. I live in Palm Beach County, Florida, which has roughly 1.5 million people, but probably a bigger area. How many square miles, or how would you describe the area of Dublin?
We have this, what we call suburb living. So you probably have the whole suburb experience as well. So where people live in the suburbs, sleep in the suburbs, but have a job in the city centre. So we have a lot of traffic going from the suburbs to the city centre. And
let me try it this way.
An awful lot of people are.
Let me just pause you for a second. I want to get a sense of the geography. So how far is it from one edge of the Dublin metropolis to the other? If you were going to draw a line to say it's a square that's this big, how big is the square, or give some sense of the dimensions of the city?
So it's actually not that big. So we have what's called a C road around Dublin, and we call that the M50, which is a highway. And that highway is no more than 10 to 15 kilometers from the city centre. So you've got this C ring, which will be medium densely populated. We're a very low rise city here in Dublin. So our tallest building is less than 100 meters, less than 300 feet. So the Starship is actually taller than our tallest building in Dublin. So we have a very low density city. And because of that low density, we've got what's called urban sprawl. So we've got urban sprawl that goes past the M50, past the main artery. So we've got outer suburbs that will be more densely populated than some parts of the city.
I'm going to share my screen so people can see a map of Dublin. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's Dublin there. So you can see the M50 there with Dublin Airport just to the north, and it goes all the way down.
The airport's to the north, and then the M50 circles around the city, and then we have Dublin Bay, or I guess what we call that. There's a body of water on the right, on the east side.
So we're the only European capital city to have beaches in the city centre. So I'm about 10 minutes from a beach just there at North Bull Island. You can see there.
North Bull Island, yes. Raheny, North Bull Island.
So that's my local beach. It's about 10 minutes from my house. And one of the major transport projects that's being proposed, we have three major projects that are being proposed at the moment. And the National Transport Authority here in Ireland is actually proposing to spend 15 billion euros, which is about $20 billion, on three projects. One of the projects is a tunnel metro from the Dublin city centre out to the airport, which is just less than 10 kilometers, which is about 6 miles.
Right. Well, let me stop. Let me pause for a second. First of all, where do you live? Are you saying you live somewhere near North Bull Island?
I live in Drumcondra there. So can you see Drumcondra? Right there in the middle, just above Fisborough.
Okay. I see. Yes, I do see that. Okay. So that's sort of near the center.
That's my, So I'm about a 10-minute walk from the city centre.
So where are the biggest traffic problems in Dublin? Is it on the M50? Is it on the roads coming in? Everywhere. All right. So where? But if you're going to try to solve the traffic problems, where do you envision a boring loop running? Is it running along the M50, underneath the M50? What do you picture as the path that the boring loops take?
Yeah, what I would propose.
Oh, let me just stop you for a second.
A spider's web system there.
Hang on a second. Just in case people aren't familiar with Boring Company, Elon Musk has a company called the Boring Company. CEO is Steve Davis, I believe. And the idea of the Boring Company is building tunnel systems for transportation and potentially other purposes. They have a system that has started in Las Vegas. They appear to be about to do a system in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, maybe Miami, Florida, maybe Austin, Texas, maybe San Antonio, Texas, where traffic would be underground in tunnels that are about 12 feet in diameter after they're built, and be cars, ideally in the future, self-driving cars that would take people around. And this takes traffic off the surface roads. It reduces noise pollution. There are electric vehicles, so you're reducing air pollution. Lots of advantages to Boring Company tunnels. Lots of critics say things that make no sense in criticizing Boring Company tunnels. So there's lots of cities that have bad traffic problems and other problems that boring tunnels might make things better. And they cost about $5 million a mile for the tunnels, and then additional costs for stations. That's a little background on the Boring Company. So I'm sorry for cutting you off there, Cormac. So you said a spider web. Can you just give an example of one line that would take?
So you can see the motorway coming in there from the airport. So we actually have about 10 million people coming into Ireland. So double the population of Ireland comes into Ireland as tourists every year. So we've got quite a busy airport there. Before the pandemic, that airport was handling about 30 million people per annum. So quite a busy airport in Europe. And we have no direct rail line currently at the moment. So we have a proposal At the moment, it's called Metrolink. It's been talked about in Ireland for about 40 years. They had a proposal about 10 years ago that got shelved, and it's back on the agenda now. But all that time they've been talking about it, that technology has become obsolete. So rather than have a railway line where rail can only serve one purpose and one route, if we had vehicle tunnels, the vehicles will be able to use the tunnels, but them vehicles can then serve the rest of the city. So we can have a door-to-door service for the whole city. And I'm not sure if you've heard of the organization, the OECD. They've done simulations for shared mobility. And shared mobility is going to be the future of transport. And that's where we use.
Well, are you talking about like robo-taxi or Uber Lyft type services, or are you talking about something else?
Yeah, so robo taxis is going to be the future. So even here in Ireland, I'd say within 10 years, a robo taxi is going to become the most popular form of transport. And I would like to make it part of the public transport system, not just a private entity. So there's, as you know, there's a few players in this robo taxi. They're all working hard to get it deployed. Google, Dublin is HQ to a lot of the tech companies. So we've got Google HQ, we've got Facebook HQ, we've got Apple HQ, all in Ireland. And we've got Jaguar Land Rover, who teamed up with Waymo. They're developing their self-driving cars down in Limerick. So we've got it going on here in Dublin and in Ireland. And they're spending big bucks. So you know yourself how much Waymo have pumped into it, how much Amazon have pumped into it. And we all know Tesla. They have millions of cars. Tesla was one of the top selling electric car here in Ireland. And there's even more on order here. So unfortunately, we only get deliveries every 3 months. And we just heard today that Tesla, they make cars for foreign markets in the first 6 months of the year, and then
No, it's they make cars at the beginning of the quarter for export from Shanghai, and then the end of the quarter, the cars go to the place where they're made. So my understanding is that July.
Yeah, we're only getting the American ones at the moment. We're not getting any of the.
I don't know about that. You're
build ones.
Cormac, you're
so
breaking
we're
up.
only getting the.
Cormac, you don't have a great signal. Is there something you can do to improve your connection?
I'll try and do that there now. Any better?
I will see. I mean, you're just breaking up. So I don't know if you have a Wi-Fi or what you're connecting to.
I'll make a move downstairs closer to the router. Yeah, but going back to Tesla, there we're quite limited, and even if we ordered the Tesla there now today, it would probably not arrive until next year, unfortunately, because the orders are so much in demand. So that is the problem. Tesla cannot build enough cars to meet the demand.
Well, I mean, Giga Berlin is coming.
It's coming. So I'm hoping to go to the opening of that. And I think Elon is there right now as we speak. I think he's in Germany meeting the possible next chancellor of Germany. So they're having a big meeting there now. As you know, there's been quite a few issues with getting the correct permits and planning commission. It's a major issue. And that's one of the projects I'm working on is the Dublin Loop, and the alternative to the Dublin Loop that the National Transport Authority in Ireland would like to build is called Bus Connects. And it's actually been designed by an American. You've probably heard of Scott Walker. So Scott Walker is famous for redesigning bus routes and how it works and what have you. But unfortunately, I see this as obsolete. And even the Bus Connects plan that we have, it's not even going to be delivered until 2027. So by 2027, you and I know that robo-taxis are going to be left, right, and center. So
Right.
why are we planning double-decker buses?
Right. So I put a map of Dublin back up on the screen. Let's talk about this again. So one example is the Dublin airport. So if there was a tunnel coming from the Dublin airport, do you envision it going to the M50 and then down towards Phibsborough? Just so people know, I'm showing on the map here. I think I'm showing on the map here.
You are, yeah.
I just don't know. Like before, it was like it would like pick up when I put my mouse over something.
If you zoom in a little bit,
there's the Dublin airport, and then there's Phibsborough, which you mentioned before. Is that sort of downtown, or is it more like where St. Patrick's Cathedral is?
That would be what we call a city centre suburb. So it's quite busy, and unfortunately, its village only has 2 lanes, so it's quite a bottleneck. So if you're traveling from the city centre out or city centre in, you're going to be stuck in Phibsborough for half an hour.
Well, is city centre like where St. Patrick's Cathedral, Trinity College, Dublin, and Guinness Storehouse? Is that what we would describe as city centre?
Yeah, so we've got quite narrow roadways in Dublin. The most we have is four lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction. And we've got these things called bus lanes as well. So the bus lanes, which unfortunately are also used by taxis. So the taxis actually take up more room than the buses. So people who can afford taxis actually get a quicker service than the people on the bus or people driving in private cars. So that's one of the contention points.
But I want you to try to take us through an example tunnel. So we start at Dublin Airport. Where do you see the tunnel going? Is it coming down the M50? Is it coming down the R108? How do you see the tunnel traveling, and where is it going?
I would do a complete straight line, and I've worked it out, that a complete straight line from Dublin Airport to St. Stephen's Green. So St. Stephen's Green there is one of the city centre parks, and that's the proposed stop for Metrolink as well. That would take up Trinity College Dublin, which is one of the biggest colleges in the city centre of Dublin. It would also serve one of the biggest football stadiums, which is Croke Park. It's a Gaelic football stadium. It has a capacity of 85,000 people. And then we have, if you just have a look there, just beyond Dublin Airport, there's a suburb called Swords, just above. So if you see Swords there, that's one of the biggest suburbs just outside Dublin. And there's actually more people living in that little suburb there than there is the entire city centre in between the canals. So all those people, I'd say about 25% of them work in the city centre, and they have to make that journey every day from the city centre to Swords.
Could you picture a tunnel running under the M1 or under the R132? Or
so I would like the tunnel to link up with that major artery, so that the Boring Company vehicles will be able to come out onto the motorway. And what I can see happening, it's already happening in Chicago this year, where there's going to be autonomous vehicle only lanes on these highways. So we have these things called hard shoulders, you call them breakdown lanes, and they could become autonomous vehicle only lanes in the near future. And they'd be able to do high speeds, or we could have them in, I know you guys have them in the middle of the highway as well. We could have what you call HOV lanes. So instead of a HOV lane, we'd have autonomous vehicle only lane. And we all know that they're capable of traveling at up to 150 miles per hour, 200 kilometers an hour. So if and because the car is driving itself, we're not going to have any idiots on the road that are going to cause accidents. So and I can see that happening quite quickly with
Well, but I think vehicles on the roads is sort of a distraction from the main point, which is we want the loops,
yeah.
the
So
underground tunnels that are taking traffic off the roads.
yeah,
And then we certainly wouldn't have human drivers once we have robo-taxis. We certainly wouldn't have human drivers or gasoline-powered vehicles in the tunnels, right?
yeah. One of my main reasons why I want vehicle tunnels is because I'd like to free up the surface space so that people can actually cycle safely. We could dedicate a whole traffic lane that was previously a bus lane. We could turn that into a cycle lane where fast moving e-mobility. So we've got these electric bikes now and electric scooters, but unfortunately, the infrastructure that we have, and even the infrastructure that's being proposed, is narrow bike lanes. And these narrow bike lanes are just no use for faster moving e-bikes and e-scooters. So we need a whole lane dedicated. If we want to encourage people to cycle or use scooters, we're going to have to provide proper infrastructure. So if we can put that traffic underground, we'd free up all that surface space. A part of COVID in the city centre of Dublin, we pedestrianised as much as we could, but unfortunately, the kickback from business and the car owners is they want to drive into the city centre. So we're still very much a car centric.
Well, but if you are a car owner, car driver, and you want to drive in the city center, if we create boring company tunnels that take some traffic off the roads, then it's easier for you to drive to city center because more of the traffic is now off the roads.
Yeah, but if you're in an autonomous car, you'll be able to drive yourself. So it's going to be both public and private cars that will be allowed use. Elon has said that in Las Vegas that any autonomous vehicle, public or private, will be allowed use the loop tunnels.
Well, let me just take us back to the map for a second because I want to see. I want to just talk more about Dublin because I'm fascinated by Dublin, frankly. So
Have you ever been here, Warren?
Oh, of course not. No, I'm an American. We don't usually leave our county.
Have you a passport?
I have a passport. I have been to several European countries, including the UK. I made it to the London area. I made it to several countries in Western Europe, back when it was called Western Europe. I lived in Japan for a year. I've been to South Korea. I've been to the Caribbean and briefly in Mexico. So and there's this country we call Canada that I consider to be a state. They would be offended to hear that I consider them to be a state.
I've been up in Toronto a good few times, so I've got good friends in Toronto.
So we're turning to this map.
I was only ever in Orlando once. That's your neck of the woods, isn't it?
Yes, but so turning back to this map for a second. So we've got one line that's running from Swords up in the north, connecting to the airport, connecting to city center. What's another example of a line that you see running that would help resolve traffic problems in Dublin?
If you see Blanchardstown there, that's again, and you can see from the change in color there, that's a huge suburb. So there's thousands of people living out there. Amazon is setting up their latest distribution for Europe there. There's data centers. Ireland has the most amount of data centers per capita around the world. So we've got a lot of tech here in Ireland and a lot of people working in these industries. So in Blanchardstown, eBay have their European headquarters, and there's a couple of thousand people working out there. So again, we've got this problem where people are working in one area, living in another area.
Well, I'm trying to get you to give me a sense of how the tunnels run. So we started in Blanchardstown, and maybe it goes out to, what is that, Mulhuddart? And then, how do you pronounce that?
Mulhuddart.
Okay, so from there, maybe through Blanchardstown, and is that all? Are we envisioning a system where there's a bunch of uh, radial tunnels that go from city center out to Dublin Airport to Mulhador to City West Business Campus down to Sandyford, and then maybe one that runs along the M50. Can you give me a sense of how this network would look?
What way I would like to do it is a kind of spider's web. So we have all these spokes going out to all the major suburbs out, that would also link up with the M50. And then we'd have cross sections where it would be justifiable. And one of the things we have to use is traffic modeling. So one of the ways that we can use traffic modeling is by mobile phone data. So now it's not where individuals are tracked, but the actual data is tracked. So we know how many people are going to travel out to Blanchardstown on a daily basis from previous records. And that way we can plan for, oh yes, it's justifiable to have a tunnel going out to Blanchardstown. And these people are going to use this public and private transport. So this is a sort of intelligent design that we need to do, that currently isn't being done. And speaking with the Boring Company, they're very much concentrating on where this is needed, and really targeted. So it's being very cleverly done at the moment. And as you know, they're keeping all their cards to the chest. Las Vegas is very much going to be a showcase for the world, not just America. They're very much concentrating on America at the moment. But once people go to Las Vegas, experience this, they're going to say, I want this for my home city.
Right. I mean, that's kind of my pitch, is that when you look at the Boring Company building in Las Vegas in particular, I think is a great example of it, that when you look at that, a lot of people in America and maybe the rest of the world travel to Las Vegas. I think Orlando, Florida is another great example. These are the two biggest convention centers for, I don't know if Europeans would know this, but one of the big businesses in America is conventions. That Las Vegas has a lot of space for conventions. So the Consumer Electronics event, I forget what it's called. They have
well, I'm actually going to that in January. So the Consumer Electronics Show,
right.
I think they're expecting 250,000 people in the space of 3 days.
Right. So the important thing there is if you have a big event, if you have big events in a certain city, and Orlando has both the convention center and it has Disney World, right? So if you do this in places that are popular with tourists, and conventions are important because a lot of times government officials have their events in conventions. They have, the annual property appraisers convention. I'm just making it up. So all of a sudden, government officials go to this place where they have the convention and they ride on the Boring Tunnel system. I would like to say this would be great for the people of my city. They'll think that, but I don't think they'll think that. They might think, hey, this would be great for me if we had this in my city. You're a lot more likely to succeed if the bureaucrat says, this would make my life better. I'm not so sure the bureaucrats care about what's going to make other people's lives better. So I don't know, is there a place in Europe that tends to be a place that has a lot of conventions?
Well, just to go back to the convention there, we had a very famous one called the Web Summit. And it was an Irish guy that set that up, and it was one of the biggest tech conferences in the world. And Elon Musk actually came, and that was his first time in Dublin at the Web Summit, and he spoke at the Web Summit. And we tried to get him to open up a gigafactory in Ireland, but it never quite happened. We're still working on that. There's a proposal.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
So my impression, and this is coming from a naive American, is that Dublin is a fun city.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Right. That Dublin is one of Elon's things. Is he said he wants to locate his factories in places where engineers would want to live. He needs a lot of engineers to run his businesses. He's got employees. You want to be in a place. So like Sparks, Nevada, where they have the first gigafactory, it's hard to get people to move outside of Reno, Nevada. There's just not a big population there. I think what they're doing at Starbase, Texas, I think he's realized that the southern tip of Texas is relatively depopulated, lacks a lot of people, lacks a lot of infrastructure. That might not be the best place to build a space business. So
that's why he's bought the oil rigs.
right, but well, I don't know about that, but now you look at Dublin, and I see Dublin as a place people would want to live, but does Dublin have enough of a population to support a big operation? I mean, I don't know how big Austin, Texas is. It may be comparable in size to Austin.
Well, we have all the major tech companies here. We have Facebook, we have Google, we have Twitter, LinkedIn, all the major tech companies and engineers and all that experience are here in Dublin. So we've got a lot going for us, but unfortunately our infrastructure is terrible. And just going back to the Web Summit there, they actually decided to leave Dublin. And one of the reasons why they left Dublin is because our traffic was just a nightmare for
Who left?
to get around. The Web Summit. So the big tech conference, going back to the conference, so they've actually moved to Lisbon in Portugal. And one of their main reasons for moving was because of the poor transport here in Dublin. So we just don't have the infrastructure here in Dublin for moving people around. So we've got the 6th worst traffic problem in Europe and the 16th worst traffic problem in the world. And it's because of our narrow roadways. It goes from 4 lanes down to 2, and there's just bottleneck after bottleneck. And because we have that traffic of city to suburb, suburb to city, everybody's going the same direction at the same time. So it's not evenly spread out, and it's not it's just when you have too many people trying to squeeze through these choke points, this is the problem we're going to have. And we have everything else going for us. We just do not have a decent transport system.
So I'm just showing people example of a narrow.
So this is a street called South William Street, and this has been ground zero for the battle of pedestrianization. So everybody in Dublin wants that street pedestrianized. But if you just go back there, there's a shopping centre, and they have a multi-story car park. If you just zoom to the right there, just right there a little bit, if you click, no, not turn right. Anyway, it's a multi-story car park, and that's where the cars exit. So because of that, that street can't.
I think that's a Tesla Model Y.
It is, yeah. And no, that I think that's
an X. That's an X.
That's an X, yeah. So
look at that, folks. We're just looking around, and we found a Tesla Model X in Dublin.
We
image capture. That's September 2019 image capture.
Yeah, so we have quite a few Teslas driving around. There's one sitting outside my door right now. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to my next door neighbor. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is the Tesla network, where Tesla owners will be able to share their car with their neighbors. So back to the whole shared mobility. Tesla's holding off on that until the cars are fully autonomous. But one of the proposals I'm making to our Minister for Transport is that any car that is working on a shared mobility platform will have zero tax. So to encourage shared mobility.
Okay. So
shared mobility is the future. We need to get as many private cars off the road as possible. One of the stats I was looking at there in America, the average American car is 13 years old. Did you know that?
I find that hard to believe, but okay.
Yeah. So if you're an American manufacturer and you're,
I think that's misleading.
Well, that's the average now. So I don't know.
But no, I would say that the average vehicle on the road that I'm going to see as I'm driving along is probably more like 5 or 6 years old. There are a lot of older vehicles that are not driven much.
Even at that, say your average motor car purchaser only replaces the car every 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So manufacturer, the profit margin is very low. So they're only making a couple of $1,000 on a new car. So if you divide that by 6, that's a very small profit margin for each car. And if they were to put that car on a shared mobility platform, they'd get double that. And that's what Tesla is going to do. Tesla is going to make most of its money on the Tesla network. People would rather pay and not have to deal with all the hassle that comes along with car ownership. Car ownership is such a complete hassle now between insurance, maintenance, you name it, and shared mobility is the future. You probably know about the motor debt time bomb that's out there that could be worse than the subprime mortgage of 2008.
The what time bomb?
The motor loan time bomb. So
no, I don't know about that.
There's a whole load of motor loans out there that are junk, basically. So the likes of GM, Ford, they're all sitting on this debt that's never going to be paid back. So
let's get back to this boring loop in Dublin thing. So you've been talking about this for how long?
Well, I ever since Elon's first tweet, which was, "I'm sick of this traffic. It's driving me nuts. I'm going to build a tunnel. I'm going to do it." So that was about 3 years ago. And as I said, we've been talking about our metro link for about 40 years. So, and it's gone through all these processes. It was so close to getting over the line about 10 years ago. And then we had the economic collapse, and then it was shelved again. So where the metro was supposed to go was literally 100 yards in front of my house. And they actually bought the land. They paid about 20 million euros, about $25 million for the land to build a station. Never happened. So they've already spent 100 million on the metro project, just on consultants and plans, and it's gone nowhere.
So there's no actual metro link running, right? It's
we have no underground metro at the moment. Okay. And they've been talking about it for 40 years. But my idea is that the metro is now obsolete. If we build something, it's going to cost way more money.
So you've been talking about it for 3 years. What kind of response are you getting from others? Are you finding that other people love the idea? Are you finding that people are being difficult, or are people just not even paying attention?
Because it's been something that's been talked about for 40 years, they just have lost all attention altogether. So it's the same like the major infrastructure projects in the US. People just lose interest. They tune out. And the amount of money, taxpayers' money that has been wasted on all these projects, that we could get such better value out of our tax money. And that's exactly what Elon Musk has proved in Las Vegas. Just on our Bus Connects project, we spent 55 million euros on just the proposal and the plans. It hasn't even gone to the planning permission stage. And in that time, Elon Musk has built this tunnel system in Las Vegas with 3 stations for 45 million euros, $55 million for the exact same money. And they've already started expanding. So they've started the expansion project there now. And by the time CES comes around, they're probably going to have a connection there to the nearest hotel. And they're going to keep digging and digging and digging. So by 2027, when we plan to open ours, they will have a full loop system in
Let me just, I want to put this map back up on the screen for a second. I want to ask you, as I'm looking at the M50, we start up near Dublin Airport, and there's this spot where the M1 and the M50 meet, I guess, east of Ballymun. And then it goes around. I don't know if people can see my mouse. It goes to Blanchardstown. It goes down to Kilnamanagh, forgive my pronunciation. It comes down around to Sandyford. So if you were to estimate in kilometers, let's say, from the upper corner there where M1 meets M50 around the loop down to Sandyford, How many kilometers is that? Is that like 20 kilometers? Is it more?
That's about 40 kilometers altogether from top to bottom.
So about 25 miles for Americans.
Yeah.
Okay, so 25 miles.
Same as a marathon. If you think of a marathon, it's 26 miles.
Right. So the Vegas Loop, I think, is supposed to be 30 miles of tunnel, although I think the long run, the current plan that's extended is 30 miles, but I think that's 15 miles each way. I don't think it's
there's a bit of looping around in Las Vegas to cover the football stadium.
But basically it would be a fairly similar size project
to
what they're talking about in Las Vegas. And this is what I have said to people before. I'm just going to take this back off shared screen. What I've said to people before is, look at Las Vegas. Las Vegas has a certain population. I forget what the population, but it's just in the ballpark of 1 million people. It's similar roughly in size to Dublin. There are about 1,000 cities in the world that are roughly the size of Las Vegas or Dublin. And each of these cities could probably ultimately do, let's say, 100 miles of tunnel. So if you had 1,000 cities do 100 miles of tunnel each, you would have 100,000 miles of tunnel. Right now, Las Vegas, the Boring Company, has 2 miles of tunnel. Right. So the potential growth for the Boring Company, what I get excited about, like if I had an opportunity to invest in the Boring Company, I would invest in the Boring Company because I see 50,000x growth. And that doesn't count intercity tunnels. That doesn't count like my crazy idea about that. That doesn't count my crazy idea about Los Angeles to Shanghai by the Bering Strait. Yeah, where you go up the west coast of North America through the Bering Strait and down through Russia into China, which people say. I made a video. Search my YouTube channel for Bering, Bering, and you'll find that video.
I've seen that video. It's very interesting.
And I think that's one example. You could extend beyond Shanghai down to Southeast Asia. You could extend to India. You could extend along the Arctic Circle, basically over to Northern Europe. And you could carry cargo and Hyperloop and really radically change transportation on the planet, make it a much smaller world, make it much less expensive, reduce a huge amount of pollution, make our lives better, many advantages.
We have a thing now in Europe, and some countries have suffered more, flight shame. So people have stopped traveling because they're being shamed about the carbon pollution. So it's going to be a major consideration going forward about how people travel, and they will travel based on the lowest amount of damage to the planet.
So just so people can see, I put up on the screen, Dublin is in the east coast of Ireland, and then there's the body of water between, which is called, what is this body of water between called?
That's the Irish Sea.
The Irish Sea, okay.
And so there is actually a proposal to do a bridge there from Belfast to Scotland, and one of the proposals is a boring tunnel.
Right.
But unfortunately, during World War II, they dumped all the ammunitions in between that strait.
So how far is it from Dublin to, say, this western tip of Snowdonia National Park?
Yeah, so that's Dublin to Holyhead, and if you were to do that by ferry, it would take about 2 hours. It's only about 100 miles.
So 100 miles underwater would be hard to do with the tunnel system.
Yeah, but that's actually a very shallow sea. So the deepest that goes is only 1,000 feet. So it is very doable. I know the Boring Company has been concentrating on soft soil up until now, but they are working on their hard rock as we speak in Austin. So, and again, the geology there is a sandstone. So the technology is developing. And once the Boring Company gets going at one type of underground soil structure, they will master that and then move on to the next one. And we don't even know.
Let me just ask you a quick, is Wexford to Wales a shorter hop?
Well, that would be Rosslare to Fishguard, and it'd be slightly deeper there, maybe about 1,500 feet, but again, doable. And one of the really depressing things that we're looking at, if we have sea level rise, we're actually going to have to build walls. So I'm not sure if you've seen the plan to wall in Europe, because
I think there's a lot of politicians want to build walls. I know that.
Yeah, but I mean, the reality is that if we're going to see this sea level rise, a lot of Europe, like you look at Amsterdam, it's already 3 meters under sea level.
What is Dublin generally, most of the city, what is that related to sea level?
Well, unfortunately, we'd lose probably about 25% of the city in the next 50 years due to sea level rise.
Well, no. I mean, I'm asking you like a number. Like, if we're talking about St. Patrick's Cathedral, how high is that above sea level?
That's only about maybe 3-4 meters.
Okay.
So
I get in trouble with a lot of people when I say I don't think the sea level rise is going to be quite as much as people fear. And I live 6 meters above sea level. In my house where I'm sitting right now. I mean, I'm on the second floor, so I'm a little higher above sea level on the second floor.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is these storm surges. So it just takes one bad storm surge to wreck an entire city. And I mean, when it happened back in the 50s in the Netherlands and in London, it took 10 years to get over that. And that sort of damage, we're looking at billions of dollars, billions of euros here. And
just really quick to answer the question that people are always complaining about when I talk about tunnels is like, well, your tunnels are going to be underground. They're going to flood when the sea level rises. No, that's not really a problem. The Netherlands has lots of tunnels and they're 3 meters below sea level.
It's 20 meters under sea level, the one in Amsterdam. I travel on it quite regularly. And tunnels everywhere, no matter where you go, you're always going to get that water seepage problem. And the engineers, they have plenty of solutions. We built one of the biggest urban tunnels in Dublin already. It's a 4-lane tunnel system. We actually built that to get HGVs, heavy goods vehicles, out of the city centre. So we had a major problem with all these 40-foot truck trailers driving in the city centre. So we said, we want them out of the city. We're going to build a tunnel. So we built a tunnel. If you go back to the map there, we built it from the port to the M50. So any truck that
from Dublin Port.
So if you see Dublin Port there, do you see that little squiggly bit from the M50? That's actually an underground tunnel. So that's a 4.5 kilometer tunnel under the city already.
Okay.
So that was one of the biggest tunnel projects in Europe when it was built, and it cost 750 million euros to build. So quite a bit more expensive than the loop system. I work it out at 83,000 euros per meter. So you know what a meter is? A little
meter, for those who don't know, a meter is about 3.1 feet.
Yeah. So each meter cost 83,000 euros, about $100,000 per meter. And I've worked it out. The loop would only work out at about 5,000 to 10,000 per meter. So that's the difference between the technology that the Boring Company have developed and the previous technology that was only 10, 15 years.
All right. So I asked you before about the response to your idea about Boring Loop. And I mean, there's a reality. Look, you ran for office, but I think you would agree with me. You didn't make much of a dent in your campaigns for office. I looked you up. You maybe got 1% of the vote. By the way, I've run for office and I got maybe about 1% of the vote. So
you know what it's like then. So I
want to get a sense of, we can talk about Dublin Loop and we could talk about what a great idea it is. But what really has to happen is the people who actually make decisions have to hear about it and have to be persuaded it's a good idea. And there's, having run for office, did you actually meet people who succeeded and became elected? And are there people who are in office you could talk to? Or are there community groups who would be interested in this? How do you take it from, hey, I've got this great idea, which I share, to, hey, we're going to get this done?
Well, that is really what I have to work on now is getting to the people who actually make the decisions. And unfortunately, there's so many vested interests and people are worried about jobs. So once you talk about autonomous cars, people think, oh, all these jobs we're going to lose. And my comeback to that is, okay, we may lose driver jobs, but we have so much work to do. We have to retrofit all our buildings. We have to work on solar panels. We need to change from a carbon intensive society into a renewable society. We're going to need all these skilled workers. So why waste workers on something that's obsolete and is probably going to be replaced in 10 or 15 years?
Well, but the answer to that is because there are vested interests who make money off the government wasting money on these things.
Yeah, but we need to convince even the vested interests that this.
No, you're not going to convince them. That's not the point. The point is that there are people who are not benefiting from the system as it is. And thus there are people, many of those people would benefit from what you're proposing. So the question is, how do you reach the people who should be benefiting from this and get them the information to say, hey, this is what we can do. This is how we can do it. It's striking to me that like Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Miami, Florida, somehow Elon Musk got in touch with the mayors of these two cities. I think it was primarily through the mayor of Miami. And we are, I think, a week away from finding out whether Fort Lauderdale is going to actually have a tunnel system called Los Olas Loop. And I think Miami is on their way towards it, Austin. And basically what happens is, I would say it this way. There are places where the government is responsive to the voters and responsive to what's important to the people. And there are places where they are not. And so I would say, based on my experience living here in Florida, I would say, and now there are people who are very critical of our governor right now. But I would say that our governor and the mayor of Miami and the mayor of Fort Lauderdale recognize that there are problems and somehow got in touch with Elon Musk and the Boring Company. And they said, hey, we can do something about this. The people in Las Vegas. Now, what's funny is in America, we have this Republican versus Democrat hate,
especially in Florida,
hate fest. No, it's countrywide. But no, I would say you'll see a lot of media saying that the governor of Florida is a terrible person. And I will tell you that pretty much everyone, I'm sure there's exceptions, but pretty much everyone in the real world here in Florida is like, I mean, people are moving from New York and California to come to Florida because we actually have life here. So I think he's very popular here. He's being demonized in our media, but I didn't want to make this just about DeSantis. The mayor of Miami reached out to Elon Musk on Twitter, communicated with the governor. They're all on board. This is going to happen. And this is going to make traffic better in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Las Vegas is going to make traffic better for the people of Las Vegas. And they have leadership in these cities, Austin and San Antonio are heading that way, that have recognized we can make life better for our people. And I think to some extent, there's some recognition of, hey, I might be a bureaucrat and I have all this power, but I still have to sit in traffic. How about we make it better for me? Where I see New York State, where I'm from, Chicago, Massachusetts, I see them as less likely to do what is in the interests of the people because the largest special interest is government. And government doesn't want to make things better for anyone but government. That's a very cynical view, but I think I'm right. But are there city council members who live on the outskirts and they have to travel in and it's a pain in the butt for them to travel? And who are the people in government who would benefit by having this system? And how do you get to them to say, hey, if you guys did this, your commute would be better?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's really up to the people. And that's where I'm going to concentrate in Dublin, is where I'm going to appeal directly to the people, because the current transport proposals that are being proposed in Dublin are not wanted. There's so much opposition to them. And we need to give an alternative.
Well, why doesn't the opposition succeed?
Being honest about it, our transport authority is completely separate to government. So and government has little or no say in how they run their business, which is why spending is out of control at the Transport Authority. So they try and keep it non-political.
So
but
say it a different way,
because they're trying to keep it non-political, it's not actually working.
it's not responsive to the people, because it's not political. We say politics is bad, but if you don't have politics involved, then you get government that is not responsive to the people.
So how I developed this whole plan was I was planning on being Dublin's first directly elected mayor. And now that has been completely taken off the table. So we're not going to have a directly elected mayor. So we have what's called ceremonial mayors that have no say in how the transport system works. So my options now are to appeal directly to the people themselves.
Well, what about the country's government? What about the national government? Do they have any say?
They do, but unfortunately, then you have the city versus rural. And we're planning on spending 15 billion in the city's transport, while rural transport goes by the wayside. And this is where, if we had the loop system with autonomous vehicles, them autonomous vehicles can travel the whole country. They won't just be traveling on one single line. They will be capable of going wherever they are needed. So as I was saying, our Metrolink project, the budget for that is about 4.5 billion euros. For that 4.5 billion euros, we could have 250 kilometers of tunnel in Dublin, and we could have 50,000 self-driving taxis. 50,000 self-driving taxis that could serve the whole country.
Well, let me push your Dublin Loop idea a little bit bigger. I'm looking. Let me share the screen for a second. I'm looking at my map of Ireland for a second. Again, this is the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland is up north of it, and we see Dublin is at the east coast of Ireland, and then we see the cities that I recognize the names of are Cork down south, Limerick, and then Galway, and there are probably a few other cities that are of note, but those are the ones I know of. So
they're the major ones. It's Galway, Limerick, and Cork.
So what is traffic like between Dublin and those cities? Is traffic on the motorways bad, or are the motorways mostly empty?
No, unfortunately, them motorways are mostly empty. So that's one of the arguments that's being pushed here, is that we should invest in rail. But we've spent absolute billions on these motorways, and most of the time they're underutilized. So I would much prefer the third lane of that motorway to become a self-driving car only lane, and have self-driving cars on them motorways. Just for one example there, if you have a look at the M3 motorway, that was what we call, you've probably heard these famous public-private partnerships. So that motorway has 2 toll booths on it. And they made a cozy deal with the government that they would make X amount per year. And if they didn't make X amount, they could sue the government for that lost revenue. So we've got a situation where we've got underutilized motorways that because they're underutilized, the company operating them is suing the government, suing the taxpayer, because they didn't make enough money.
So, but the point is,
at the same time, the people in government are pushing private rail, and I have a railway line just 100 yards away from me, and the trains going by that line are empty.
But the point is, if the motorways are empty, then we don't need tunnels to replace them.
Not city to city.
Right.
So city to city, we don't need tunnels, but within the city itself, we need tunnels.
And I think you're saying the tolls to travel from, say, Dublin to Cork are very high on a motorway.
They wouldn't be high as such. So I've been in Buffalo, and I've done that trip from Niagara down to Buffalo, and there was like 4 tolls. That's your neck of the woods. No.
I'm not sure what you mean about. I mean,
Upstate New York.
if you want to go from Buffalo to Albany, which is where I'm from, I think the toll might be $5 or $10, which is less than €10. I don't think the tolls are that big on the.
So we have two tolls on that road to Cork, and they'd be 190, so €190, which would
that's like $200 or more.
No.
Oh, $1.90.
$1.90.
1.9 euros.
Yeah.
Okay, so not very high. So
it's quite low. Yeah.
So it's not a toll problem, and so if there was, so I just wanted to cover this, that Dublin Loop would be valuable because Dublin is such a high traffic city, but there's not a particular need to run boring loops from Dublin to the other cities.
No.
Okay.
Because our motor, but they're talking about investing in rail.
Okay, let me just
heavy rail.
So Jim White had asked this. Jim is one of the moderators in the channel, and he asked something I was thinking about. So one approach is to get the city to pay the boring company to build the system. Another approach is for the boring company to come in and say, hey, we'll pay to build the system. We will charge tolls for using the tunnels, and we'll give the city 10% of revenue. So the city pays nothing up front. And I actually talked to the Fort Lauderdale mayor about this concept for Fort Lauderdale, and he didn't say that was the proposal, but he said that sounded like a pretty good idea. It's possible that that's what was proposed. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the arguments that I've got from talking to people about the Dublin Loop is that it's very vehicle centric and private car ownership centric. So to combat that, what I'm proposing for the Dublin Loop is that public transport would be completely free for the user, and private people would pay the toll. And you and I know a lot of people.
Wait, that's not, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, the boring company loop systems are not necessarily private car centric. They can be.
Oh no, I don't think that at all.
Yeah.
But that's one of the arguments I get when I talk about the Dublin Loop with planners, is it's too car centric. But what people
why is car centric bad if the cars are underground and they're not affecting pedestrians and they're not emitting pollution in the air and they're not emitting noise pollution? Why does it matter if they're cars? If it works, it works.
Yeah, exactly. That's my idea altogether. But
why do you have to compromise and offer some? Look, one of my criticisms of people in politics and people in government is, well, we'll just give something away. There is no giving something away. Anything that you give away, somebody's paying for.
Yeah, well, this is what we pay taxes for as a society.
No, we pay taxes for government. We pay taxes for government to waste our money and pretend that they're doing something for us.
This is why we need to use our taxpayer money more effectively.
But that's not going to happen. That's why I'm suggesting that if the boring company came in and said, we'll build the system for you, we won't charge you anything, and when it's over, we'll give you 10% of revenue. That seems like it would be a very attractive thing. And what would be the reason for saying no at that point? And my point about this, by the way, is if the boring company comes to Dublin and makes that offer, and then they go to Belfast and they make that offer, and Belfast says yes and Dublin says no, and then 5 years later, people from Dublin go to Belfast and say, hey, why the hell don't we have this? And they find out it's because their government said no. Then, and I actually use Cleveland and Cincinnati in Ohio as my examples, because those are two cities that are rivals to each other in Ohio, in the state of Ohio. And I could say the same thing about Orlando and Tampa or whatever, that there are cities that are very comparable. And if the people in one city see that the other city has it, why the hell don't we have this? What do you mean you said no to this? Yeah. So I think the key is, and that's why it's so important, like you said, build it in Las Vegas. If you build it, they will come. Build it in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. People from New York, from the northeastern United States, travel down to Miami and Fort Lauderdale every year in the winter. They will see it. So it just seems to me like if the boring company can adopt that model where they basically raise money from venture capital or from their own revenue stream, they build the tunnel system, and then they are allowed to earn a profit and then give a share of the revenue to the city. It seems like a no-brainer system that every city should take, except that politics is that bad.
Well, this is where we go back to our vested interests. Like how it's working in Las Vegas is there's a set fee, and the boring company are being paid a set fee but all journeys are free for anybody attending.
Oh, that's for the convention center specifically.
Yeah.
That's not the whole
Yeah.
Las Vegas Loop. That's specifically the convention center.
No, but the business model will develop in time, but we have to admit there is a reality of public and private. And one thing that planners do not want to admit is that people do not want to use public transport.
Wait, that happens in Ireland too?
It happens everywhere. I mean, your buses are just as bad as our buses. Our trains are just as bad as your trains. Let's be honest. Public transport in its current form is cow's manure. And that's putting it politely. So we can do better. And we can have our cake and eat it. And that's what I think the loop system is. That's having our cake and eat it. We can have both public and private transport.
Well, but why do we even need the public transport? I mean, I don't know what you mean by public transport. If you're saying free transport, I don't like it. If the boring company builds a system and you can either bring your private your private self-driving car into it, or you can ride in a boring company owned vehicle where you pay a fare, why is that? Is that public transport, or you think that's something else?
Well, unfortunately, Warren, not everybody can afford transport. And that is a reality that we have to face. Transport is expensive. Private car ownership is now one of the biggest financial burdens a person.
But you know, here's the whole point. The whole point of the robotaxi idea. My big takeaway from the future of robotaxis is it will lower the cost per mile of transportation. So
Yes.
like currently, and I don't know what the cost, if there's a cost estimate for Ireland, the rough estimate of the cost of owning your own car in the United States works out to about 70 cents a mile. This is from Tasha Keeney of ARK Invest. That's her number. I've heard 60 cents a mile, but 60, 70 cents a mile, which is, I don't know, 0.5 euros or something like that.
Yeah, but that's pretty expensive, isn't it?
Right. No. So, but the theory is that the robo-taxi network over time, and the cost of riding in an Uber is around $2.50 or, 2.2 euros a mile or something like that. But if we get to a world where robo-taxis are common and available in high volume, the cost of running a Tesla Model 3 in the United States today is probably approaching 10 US cents or 0.1 euros. Yeah. If we can get the price of a ride down to say 25 cents a mile, or roughly a third of what it is now, then transportation becomes more accessible to more people. And you can talk about the very poor people, right? And we need to make transportation available for them. It's like, okay, I appreciate that you want to take care of people who don't have jobs and don't work, but the economy will work a lot better if the people who do work and do have jobs can get to them for less money and have more money available to spend. And the fact that the economy runs more efficiently makes it easier to do whatever you need to do to take care of the people who don't have anything.
Yeah.
And I think if we keep kissing up to the radical left who want to stop everything that the private sector does because we have to serve some fictional person who is disabled and stuck in their home and can't do anything, we have to provide them transportation even though they're not going anywhere. We need to move past that and say, look, there are people who actually want to work, who actually want to go from point A to point B, and they're making the economy run. And if we free up the economy and let the economy grow, and we stop hamstringing everything we try to do by some need to serve some fictionalized problem that we can't really fix anyway, let's get things moving and get the economy growing. And then these problems tend to take care of themselves.
Yeah, there is a happy medium. But just going back to our current transport system and the amount of money that we put into our current transport system, we're not getting value for our buck, are we?
No.
So
we are mostly, for Americans who are driving cars and roads in a lot of America, we're doing okay.
What about public transport?
Oh, it's crap. Always has been, always will be.
But I mean, if we are to get people out of privately owned cars, which is what we need to do going forward, we're going to have to provide a fairly decent public transport system.
Let me restate that for you. If we are able to provide people an alternative to privately owned cars so that they can save money and have a more convenient life by not owning a car rather than taking their car away from them, right? But if we can create a system where they'd rather not own a car, that would be better, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the robotaxi network offers is you're not going to want to bother owning a car. Like, I don't know, do you own a car?
No, I gave up my car 2 years ago.
So I own a car. I own two cars, my wife and I.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's expensive. Our insurance is expensive. Our teenager just got a driver's license, so our insurance rates went up $1,000 a year. We spend money on gasoline. We spend money on maintenance. And our cars are not that expensive to own and operate. But, when you add it up, if the average American's spending 70 cents a mile, and we're not poor. So the burden.
But it's a major financial burden on the average household.
Yes. And I was going to say beyond that, it's not just a financial burden. There's also the time burden that people don't think about is I have to get an oil change. And that's unfortunately 3 hours of my life shot to get an oil change. I have to go to a gas station to fill up the tank. And if I have to do that once a week, there's another 30 minutes a week or 20 minutes a week. And you just keep finding, you have to change the windshield wipers. I need to get new tires. I need to sell this car and buy a new car. And if you go through all the things you do to support your car ownership and you say, I'm going to free you of all of that. And you just hit an app on your phone, walk out your front door, and there's a robo-taxi pulling up in a minute or two. And you never have to find your car in the rain. You never have to walk half mile from the park place where you park to the place where you're going. A robo-taxi network can make life much more convenient for most people than owning your own car. And but I don't like the language of we're going to take your car away from you. I like the language of we're going to make it so you don't even want to bother owning a car.
Yeah. But we have to admit, though, that some people will want a car.
Yeah, rich people.
Yeah. But when they're not using their car, they can send it off and be a robotaxi, and then they'll make money.
My impression is the rich people won't do that.
You'd be surprised.
I mean, I keep seeing all these people saying, I'm not letting strangers in my car. Okay, well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can keep your car. We're not going to take your car away. We're just going to create a much better system that's available for anybody who wants it. If you're forcing something down people's throats, then they're going to resist it. If you say, listen, we're making up a system that will make your life better, but if you don't like it, you can keep your car.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe 20 years from now, that changes. That okay, now you're not really okay to have to keep your car anymore, but that's 20 years down the road and we have to worry about it.
Yeah, but what we have in Dublin now being proposed is that they want to spend 15 billion euros, $20 billion on obsolete public transport that people may not even use.
Yeah. So
we're looking at buses, we're looking at rail, we're looking at tram lines. You've seen some of the infrastructure projects, the cost. Look at the one in New York. What is it, 3 billion for a mile of tunnel?
Hey, listen, I've got about 10 minutes left before I have to end the live stream. So what do you see as the prospects for this happening in the next 5 to 10 years? What gives you hope that Dublin Loop can happen?
My hope is that people realize that the proposals being proposed at the moment are obsolete. So double-decker buses, rail are obsolete, and people will want both public and private transport. So people will want these robot taxis. So people seem to think that these robot taxis are 10, 20 years away when they're not. I mean, they're already driving around in some cities in the US and in other cities around the world. So you look at the Waymo project down in Phoenix, Arizona. That's been working very successfully. It's been working well for it's level 3, and that's the best it's going to get.
Well, it's working at a very limited space, and it hasn't expanded because it doesn't really make money. It's not really economic. It's not really working as well as you'd like, and it's not really economically viable. But Thaddeus in the chat asked this question: what does Cormac think about giving free rides in off-peak traffic and charging when the tunnel is full? I would go with lower cost rides in off-peak traffic and charging more when traffic is heavy. But what do you think about that idea? What's commonly known as peak load pricing?
Yeah, well, that's this is one of the problems that we have in Dublin about peak time travel, where everybody's moving into one direction at the same time. So, what they have in London for that is what's called congestion charges, and that's
No, but I
basically.
mean, but for the boring tunnels, what do you think about it for the boring tunnels?
Well, it depends on whether you're going to travel in a public car or whether you're going to travel in a private car. So if you're traveling in a private car, you should pay extra. If
Okay.
you want a car all to yourself, fair enough, but you're going to pay for it. If you want to share that car with other people, you get it for free or a discount.
Okay, so
That's,
let me ask you this question. I don't see any other questions in the chat yet that at least if they're there, I missed them. I have this very positive impression of Ireland. I don't have a really good reason for the impression of Ireland other than just I think it has good PR. You know, Tesla needs Ireland's PR team, but
they don't do PR.
the best PR is no PR. Exactly. So what? How would you sell to somebody, hey, you should come to Dublin? Why would somebody want to live in Dublin? Why would why would somebody want to open a company in Dublin? Leave out the traffic, right?
Yeah.
What's the big attraction of Dublin? Why do people want to be there?
The Irish people are we sell ourselves, and no matter where you go in the world, we always get a welcome. And St. Patrick's Day, I mean, it's the biggest PR job in the world. We're the only country guaranteed an interview with the US president every year. So, okay. I mean, we have a lot going for us, but we're also smart. We're savvy. We know how to spend a buck. And
a really educated population, right? Like Ireland is pretty good about educating its young.
Yeah, that's because we don't rip people off and leave them with 200 grand in debt.
No, but even I just mean I remember traveling in Europe and I met a couple of young guys from Ireland and they were talking about how much schoolwork they did and they seemed very motivated. Now, it's a random small sample, right? But I just have the impression that Ireland has good schools. Ireland has a motivated, not that there's no unmotivated students. I'm sure there are some.
No, we're very tuned in. Like we do tend to educate ourselves on everything going on in the world. Even there today now, we've donated 1 million vaccines to the third world, which is the most per capita in the world. And there was a TED talk there a couple of years ago about which nation has contributed more to the world, and Ireland got the #1 spot. So we like to give back. We like to talk to people. We don't have any hang-ups. We'll talk to you no matter what your beliefs, left, right, middle, you name it.
Yeah, no, I will tell you that I grew up. So I'm Jewish. My family is immigrated to the U.S. Probably 100 years ago, from more than 100 years ago from Eastern Europe. But I grew up in a town that had a lot of Irish people.
Yeah,
like a lot of Irish Catholics, a lot of Italian Catholics, a lot of Polish Catholics. And my best friends growing up not all, but some of my best friends growing up were Irish. And I always joke with people that I'm more comfortable in an Irish pub, an American Irish pub, because I haven't been in an Irish pub. I'm more comfortable in an Irish pub than I am in like a Jewish community center or a synagogue. Although I'm not particularly fond of Guinness. I hope you'll forgive me that.
No, I don't. I actually worked in Guinnesses, but I don't like Guinness. I remember I was 16 when I worked in the mailroom there, and we were given 2 free pints every day, and I never liked it.
2 pints a day. No, I like McEwen's Scotch Ale, which is a strange, maybe a very unusual choice. But so yeah, I just have this general. You guys are doing something right with your PR. I agree with St. Patrick's Day is a really good PR bit. How is Ireland being affected by all the migration into Europe? Is Ireland getting a lot of migration into the country as well as other places?
Well, we wouldn't have been as affected as some. There was quite a kickback, but we're very open. We're an open economy. We welcome people. Up to 20% of the population now would have been born in a different country. So we're quite a diverse population.
Well, how much of that 20% is another European country or North America versus somewhere else?
I would say somewhere else more so. So within Europe, we have the open borders. So anyone in Europe can come to Dublin.
Like when I was in the UK, when I was in the London area, a lot of the people who were not born in the UK were from South Asia, from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Is that a big chunk of it, or is it somewhere else?
Not in Ireland so much. And the reason why they have that in the UK is because they were former British colonies. Now we're a former British colony as well. We're 100 years independent nearly from the UK. So we have a very diverse population from all over the world. So and we're very well integrated as well, where other countries would have, where communities would stick together. We have a very integrated community and we welcome everybody.
Let me just touch on that a little bit also on a different angle. So I was raised to believe that the United States was the greatest country in the world. It's something you'll hear every American politician say at least 3 times an hour. I am under the impression that the Chinese economy has arguably become larger than the US economy, that China may actually be the greatest country in the world at the moment. Not the most fun, but the most powerful, at least as an economic power. Are you seeing Chinese tech companies locating in Ireland as well?
We're seeing a few, all right, and they certainly want to base themselves here. China really wants to move into Europe, but I don't know within the current political climate how well accepted that's going to be.
Is there a negative attitude towards China in Ireland?
I wouldn't say that, but it varies from the average Joe to the professional. So where we welcome everybody professionally, and then individuals would have their own personal opinions. So
I just have this thing on the comments on my videos. Whenever I talk about Giga Shanghai, and even if I don't talk about Giga Shanghai, there seems to be this flood of commenters attacking China. There's this very strong apparent hatred. I don't know whether it's bots. I don't know whether it's trolls. I don't know how much of it's genuine. There is a massive propaganda campaign, at least in the US, against China, which
the US doesn't want to admit that they are no longer top dog.
Yeah.
They are no longer top dog in technology. They are no longer top dog in way of living, in poverty. The China is on the up and up. How they go about that, though, is very counterintuitive to our way of life and the US's way of life. As where China are, let's just do it.
Okay, so I'm pretty much out of time. I've got somebody coming over in about a half hour, and I need to get ready for that. Tesla, by the way, those who are familiar with him, Raphael from Teslatino is taking me for a drive with his FSD Beta 9.1. So that's what I'm ending this for. This is important. I'm going to take my second ride in his FSD Beta version 9. I don't remember if I was in version 9.0 or 9.1 the last time, but he doesn't have 9.2 yet, so it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment. So, and if you follow the Teslatino channel, you'll see us.
I'm looking forward to that.
And just a quick shout out to Will Bradbury for coming on the. I don't know if you're familiar with Will Bradbury. His channel is Boring Revolution. So he said hello to both of us. I want to thank the moderators. I see Mark Plott and Jim Whitehead. I think there was at least one more. Matt Sankow. I want to thank the moderators for this, and thanks everyone for watching. Hang on for 1 second, Cormac. I'm going to end this stream, and I'll say goodbye to you.
Yeah, can I just give a shout out to my website? So I'm constantly updating that. I'm still not quite finished, polished off. So I appreciate any feedback you might have. It's www.thedublinloop.ie. So .ie is the code for Ireland.
Yeah, so. And if you just Google Dublin Loop, it's the number one result.
Right away. Yeah.
So anyway,
any feedback is appreciated.
Okay, so Cormac, thank you. I want to thank the moderators again. Thanks to the Vasa Law Firm in Sweden and all my Patreon supporters for helping this channel grow. If you like what you're hearing and enjoy seeing these different conversations, this is the kind of video that I'm not going to make much money on. That's a long story why. So if you want to see different kinds of content, please support this channel on Patreon. I'm going to do it anyway, but appreciate it. So I'm going to end the stream, and then I'm going to be talking to Cormac, and then I got to go meet up with Raphael. So I've ended the stream.